proportional response. Book 1. Chapter 21, Part 6, An Xaltan's Defiance. Luma sat in her command chair and looked out over her near-empty space control deck. One of her crew, the young Nira Onsen, who had been too stupid, too stubborn, or both, to retreat with the rest of the control crew, sat at her station, monitoring their little corner of the galaxy, while Xaltan troops tried to break through the blast doors on the command deck. Luma tried not to think about that, and what she'd have to do if they succeeded, so she occupied herself writing and sending commendations for her bridge crew. One well-worded letter placed in a time-delayed delivery buffer, with the names of everyone who had fled and the one idiot who stayed included. After some time, the door began to burn white-hot, and she could see droplets of metal bubbling up. She took a look at her one officer and, without a word, began to set her plan to destroy the station in motion. Then she heard a series of loud thumps from the other side of the door, and the white began to fade back to red. Onsen let out one shuddering breath, gave her a relieved glance, and turned back to her duties. The fireworks started soon after that. The plot displayed two countdowns, one for the small fleets with the oversized signature headed straight for the Xaltan walls. Another, barely a minute behind the first, for the separate fleets that Xaltan sensors apparently couldn't make out. As the timer reached the last few minutes, she noticed one of the two Xaltan fleets backing up, and an increase in comms traffic between that fleet and the voter's ship. Her eyes narrowed, and she looked over at Onsen.
You claim to have knowledge that your rating shouldn't have. I'm willing to bet that knowledge extends to more than how to damage this station. You know how to jam foreign communications channels.
The younger woman gave her a hard smile, which wouldn't have looked out of place on any of the bulls she knew, and nodded. Luma nodded in return.
Your hands look steadier than mine. I will take the two fleets. You make sure that voter can't get any sort of message out, at least until the battle is actually joined, and longer if you can.
Luma kicked off the jammers and let them broadcast in the direction of the two Xaltan fleets. Onsen turned back to her console and started pushing buttons. The woman kept pushing buttons too. Would that I could trust my hands to do as much right now. Then the countdown ended, and the two large fleets translated to sublight speeds, directly into a hail of fire, the likes of which Luma could never have imagined if she hadn't seen it. Fire from the layered Xaltan formation poured into the human ships. Those human ships had come out of FTL already firing. Somehow, she'd thought that impossible, and their own fire poured into the Xaltan lines. She leaned forward and zoomed the plot in on one of the fights and watched incredible quantities of ordnance being hurtled through space impact on ships from both sides. And she blinked at the display several times and saw that the Xaltan fire had gone straight through the human ships. The Xaltan formations seemed to realize at about the same time she did that they'd made a mistake. She could see the walls close up together and try to fall back, but the realization came far too late. Human fleets burst onto the sensors as they cascaded down into sublight speed. They had not been able to get entirely past the initial wall of smaller screening ships, but they did come in off to the side and far enough forward that they had clear shots at the Xaltan ships to the rear. All of the ships from both sides started firing at once. Projectiles, beams of energy, and fighter craft boiled through space. She zoomed in at the human formation and cocked her head in curiosity at what she saw. The humans had their larger ships in front, taking the punishment, with the smaller ships to the sides and behind where they could duck behind the larger ships. That seemed odd to her, given the formation of the Xaltans, until she called up the energy profiles of the ships. Those capital ships are sharing their shields. That is supposed to be impossible. Well, wait. Not impossible, just terribly risky. She tried desperately to remember why everyone considered the maneuver such a risk, but only came up with fragment memories about harmonics, sync rates, and something about concentrating different attacks on different parts of the shield to break the sync. She watched the larger Xaltan ships pour fire at the human ones, but they seemed to do little damage as the human shields absorbed the punishment. Several of the second wall Xaltan ships buckled or exploded under the assault, however. Then she noticed that the first wall hadn't fired. The ships seemed to be desperately trying to maintain some semblance of their formation while interposing themselves between the humans and their comrades, but they hadn't fired a single shot. Wait, they didn't fire in the initial salvo either, did they? How did I miss that? The human ships continued to move straight in towards the system, rather than towards their targets, somehow maintaining their formation even as they began to present their sides, rather than their fronts, to the Xaltan ships. The screening wall of smaller Xaltan ships couldn't keep up, and Luma blinked in disbelief. I have never seen any ship that could out-accelerate or outspeed a Xaltan warship. Even the other 4 founding species warships can't do that. It seemed someone could now, though. The 2 fleets she'd chosen to watch threw energy, missiles, and fighters at one another, but the human ships managed to stay ahead of the shielding wall of the smaller ones, and the larger ships found themselves in one another's way. At the same time, the human small fighter craft reached the Xaltan fleet and began to take their own toll on the larger ships. Nera suddenly stood and let out a most bull-like bellow of triumph. Luma looked over to the woman, then at the holo display showing the skirmish with the second Xaltan fleet, and found that no second skirmish seemed to exist. That Xaltan fleet had stopped maneuvering, and the humans had gone back to FTL speeds. She looked a question at Nera, who gave her a broad grin and answered by flipping on the comms between the 2 ships.
Repeat, we surrender. We do not have any voters on board. The only voter in this task force is in the capital ship located at the coordinates on the subcarrier of this frequency. Humans, please respond. Repeat, we...
Another transmission broke into the channel, and that hated voter's voice carried through.
Traitors, maggots, unambitious pond-drinking scum. I will have your heads. I will find your children, your nieces and nephews, and all your relations out to the 3rd generation, and feast upon their entrails. Fight, you tailless cowards. You dare to give away my position to the enemy. You have sealed your fate in a way that...
The transmission broke off as the second human fleet directed a sustained jamming pulse directly at the Xaltan capital ship. Luma then remembered something and looked back at the 3rd holo display, the one following the 3rd FTL signature they'd tracked. She saw it shift direction as it, presumably, received the exact coordinates of the ship from the Xaltan transmission. She cocked her head at the display and stared curiously. The humans were on course for the Xaltan ship before. Now they will miss it by several light minutes. I believe that is outside of combat range for even the greatest capital ships I have ever heard of. Nera seemed to sense her thoughts and spoke.
The Xaltan ship is using jammers and some other ECM tricks to confuse our sensors, and the humans are using our sensors to pinpoint the ship's location.
The comms tech bit her lip.
I am afraid I may not have sent the humans the best of all possible data, but I am trained for comms, not tracking. I feared that ship might not be where I thought it was, and tried to make that clear to the humans on a subcarrier band, but didn't want to give too much away in case these Xaltans managed to catch any of our transmissions.
Luma lifted a hand to the younger woman.
You performed admirably under the circumstances, Nera, above and beyond the call of duty, as well as taking on and faithfully executing duties for which you were not properly trained. Furthermore, it looks like the humans now have the right of it, and will be able to engage that bastard directly in short order. When all of this is over, you and I are going to have a conversation with the bull in charge of this station, and if you aren't accepted for the training forthwith, then, bull or no bull, he and I are going to have some words.
Luma caught the flash of the woman's smile and turned her head quickly back to watch the tail end of the other ongoing battle. She blinked her eyes rapidly and tried to calm her nerves after the display of emotional force she'd just put on for Nera. I keep talking like that, and someone is going to try to get me to enroll with the bulls. Green grass forbid. She calmed her heartbeat and switched to the view with the Xaltan capital ship. It didn't seem to have picked up the fleet headed for it, probably due to the targeted jamming from her own station and the not-in-combat human fleet. She could see when the voter realized his peril, though, as he turned to leave. Thankfully, at least to her mind, the realization came too late. She saw the voters' ship start forming a singularity to try and go FTL, then realize that they could not escape. Someone on the voter ship managed to cut through the jamming and broadcast the voters' orders to the First Fleet, the one still engaged in a desperate battle with the humans. The voter's voice came through on an audio-only channel.
Admiral, I order you to disengage yourself and your other 2 capital ships from those human interlopers and come to my aid. Now.
The admiral of the engaged fleet responded, and Luma could hear the telltale sound of a ship strained to its limits.
With respect, sir, if I abandon my fleet now, they will be destroyed, and will be unable to inflict even minimal casualties on the humans. I may lose my command today, but I intend to go down fighting like a proper...
The voter's voice came back full of fury.
Damn your men, damn your honor, damn your battle, damn the humans, and damn whatever you intend, Admiral. I made you, I put you in that chair, and I gave you your orders. Now get over here and keep me alive.
The admiral of that fleet growled something under his breath, and, out of some sort of instinct, Luma cut all jamming. The jamming doesn't matter anymore. All of the cards are on the table now. The Xaltan admiral's face appeared on one of her screens, as did the panicked face of the voter. The admiral stared at the screen with quiet intensity. Luma saw the moment the man made his decision. The Xaltan admiral drew himself up, stared at the screen with hard eyes, raised one corner of his lip, and cut the connection with the voter. Another channel from the admiral opened, this one broadcast through the system. It showed the admiral standing on his command deck, scorched panels and haggard men all around him. With great dignity and even a touch of defiance in his voice, the man spoke.
Human fleet, we surrender. I say again, we surrender. You have won this day. My men and I are, as of now, all your prisoners. Lashtail fleet, stand down and draw your arms.